Okay, so I'd like to welcome Robbie from the Saltstraumen Brothers. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, would you like to tell us where you are in the world today?
So yeah, thanks a lot for having me on and for letting me be here. And right now I am talking to you from Bratislava in Slovakia.
Okay, but that's not hometown then, from your accent. It's,
Yeah, exactly. No, so I'm the eldest of the Saltstraumen brothers. I was born in Yorkshire and raised in Cumbria, so I spent most of my life in Cumbria. But you can't tell by the accent. But half Scottish, half English. My mum's from Glasgow, and all that side of the family are from Scotland and the Highlands too. And then my dad's from London, and a lot of that side of the family live down there. So yeah.
And you're the eldest of three brothers, so we've got yourself and Calum and Jack, and you're the oldest. Cool.
Exactly.
So I was having a little read, doing a little research about you guys, and you sound like proper outdoor boys. So the things that we've got here are going to the beach with the inflatable crocodile, exploring tidal pools, dropping in the water like fallen trees, leaping and flipping about like dolphins, sprawling out in the current like Baloo from the Jungle Book. So sounds like you were adventurous boys, like to play from an early age.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, we were always raised and to be out, in the beach, in the sea, ever since we were born, really. And then having like our grandma on the Scottish side up in the Highlands, every time we'd go up there, we'd go to the beach, go in the sea, go swimming. She lived next to Loch Broom, so we would swim in there as well. Pretty much any time of the year, she'd be up for going in. So that would mean we would also be in like winter, spring, summer, and anything. And we grew up in Langwathby in Cumbria, and we lived in a small village. It's a small village, and the house we lived in had a bank going down to the River Eden. So we were lucky that we could just go and swim in the river there. And I think for all three of us, we've just grown up with like a really close connection to nature, and we come from quite an adventurous family. It's got quite a few good characters in it who all love the outdoors and love having that connection with nature. So I think it's just something that's always been there, like ingrained in our kind of family culture and what we've been raised doing. And swimming obviously is a massive part of that for us all.
Excellent. Sounds idyllic. It sounds beautiful. So can you remember learning to swim? Or could you swim before? Do you remember a moment learning to swim, or you could always
No, I do remember swimming, because I think the way that we learned it was good. We were always encouraged ever since we were small children, to be in the water, to enjoy it, whether that was a loch, a lake, in the sea. But also we were taught to respect it. So, so for example, our grandma Wild, she would, like I said, she would always swim any time of the year, winter in Scotland, north of Scotland. She was like, right, just let's get in, but she always taught us to be careful and to respect the currents, the tides, to not be stupid. And on top of that, we, our mum always took us to lots and lots of swimming lessons. So we learned to swim from quite a young age, but we still went through, having maybe 2 swimming lessons probably a week for quite a long time. And then we do that after school. And I think that combination of spending loads of time in the outdoors, in the lochs and lakes, but also having that systematic instruction from a professional kind of combined to just instill like a real love for swimming, but also the technical abilities to do it properly, and feel confident in our abilities as well. So I would say, yeah, both those two angles were pretty important. But I can remember being a little kid and yeah, just loving going to the beach and jumping in the water and just playing for hours in the water. And I kind of liked it that we never really got told, it's like, oh, it's cold, so you shouldn't go in, or, you know, we were always encouraged to kind of push the limits a little bit. And, you know, often like we'd swim with mum. Even I remember even on a holiday in France, she was with me on the beach, and you know, I was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 maybe, and she was like, you know, swimming with me, but letting us go as far out as I felt comfortable, and then like challenging me a little bit to go a little bit further, to, you know, to have that kind of that stage of trying to push your boundaries, but in a way where you build confidence, and not in a stupid way either. Like I say, with that respect. So I do remember those early memories of swimming pretty strongly. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I think you hit the nail on the head then. You've had so thanks to your mum and your grandma, that you've had that balance of, like, say, I mean, Embers' strapline is love the water, respect the water, and you have to have that balance. And yeah, you've had that such a privilege, like I say, to be out around open water and wild water and learn how powerful it can be, how fantastic it can be. And I think that's what a lot of children are missing now. They learn to swim, and even if they do learn to swim, but they'll just be in a swimming pool, and then suddenly being out in open water can be a different experience. So a brilliant experience, but like I say, it's different, and you need to have that respect for it. So yeah, that sounds like you had the perfect balance growing up then, of learning how it all fits together. So that's cool. And I suppose the other two looked at what you did, so and followed. The little ones followed.
Exactly. They're there to jump in as well.
Yeah. Excellent. So you went on to swim Ullswater, I believe, and then off the back of that, Calum decided you should do. So Ullswater's 9 miles, then Calum decided you should do a 9-day swim. Is that correct? It's a bit of a jump.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, so Ullswater, for a little bit of context, I did that with an arts company called VARC, that's Visual Arts in Rural Communities, and the swim was part of an art project. So the idea was that I would swim the lake and trace a line through that landscape, which would then give me a new perspective with which I could then create a series of paintings and drawings to map the landscape in a new way. And some of the canvases, I soaked them in the lake itself and then took them out after a while, and they had all the marks and shapes and forms, and then I'd work on top of them to build up these images. And yeah, it was like an open call for ideas, and I thought, do you know what, I've always wanted to try and swim it. It's been a lake that we lived very closely to when we grew up. We always went there. We were always swimming in there. We were hiking the mountains around, and it's always been a favourite place of mine. You know, I'd go there camping with my friends and things like that when I was a teenager. And I remember the first swim I did when there was like, yep, okay, here's the grant, you can do the art project. And then I realised that, now I've actually got to do the swim. And the furthest I'd ever swum, I think, before that was maybe 1 kilometre in a pool. I'd never tried anything much further. And I remember going, and it was January, and I just got in and swam, and after 2 minutes I was freezing. And I got back out, and I just thought, like, how am I actually going to do that? But that was a really good point, because it taught me a lot about like breaking any goal down into manageable chunks. And because I had to swim it and I wanted to do it, and then it was a case of like I had to realign how I understood the lake, or I had to change my perception of what's far in terms of a swim, and what's easy, what's difficult. And then from there, I just every day went back to the lake and just built it up and did a little bit further each day, until I got to the point where I did. On one day I went and then swum from halfway back to Howtown, and then the next day I came back and swum from halfway back to Pooley Bridge. And I thought, well, okay, I've now technically swum the whole length. Let's just see if I can do it. And with that one, I just remember getting in the water and I thought, I'm just going to swim, there's nothing's going to stop me. Like the only reason I will stop is if I physically break down and someone has to pull me out the water. I was like, I'm going to do it, and just have that kind of like really focused mindset. And then that worked, thankfully. It took me 6.5 hours, so it's quite a long swim. But then after that, I think it changed a few things. And Calum came up with the idea to then swim the entire River Eden, which is 90 miles from the source to the sea, so to the Solway Firth. And we decided to do it over 9 days and do around 10 miles a day. And we were camping and staying in different spots in each day. But it was a really great experience. And it was also part of the reason for swimming the river. We knew it had never been done before. It was a good adventure to go for. And also we, as I mentioned, the house we grew up had the River Eden round the bottom of the garden. And at that time, mum and stepdad separated and the house had been sold. So for us, it was also a way to say goodbye to a place. And that was a kind of probably like a more hidden symbolic aspect of the swim, beyond it just being, like a good challenge and everything like that. So it had a much deeper meaning for all of us. And that became quite a special moment, I think, for the swim itself. But it was a really like special experience, and it definitely had its ups and downs. When you swim for 10 miles a day for 9 days in a row, some bits are beautiful, other bits you just hate in your life. But it's real up and down.
Can I imagine? Yeah. And with your brothers as well, ups and downs with your brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
A few moments where you love and hate each other.
It's fun. It's a really fun thing also to swim with my two brothers, because even with that, there's a little like, we're three guys. We've always like played a lot of sport, but we're pretty close as brothers as well. So we kind of have a little bit of healthy brotherly competition. So it's the second that someone suggests a challenge, nobody's going to be the first one to back down or quit or anything. So I think that definitely like pushes us forward a little bit as well.
That's interesting. Going back, you were saying about Ullswater and the art project. I hadn't realised. So you planned the art project when you did it. It wasn't as you did the swim, you were inspired to then create the art afterwards. It was always very intentional. They were interwoven together. It was that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the swim itself was kind of thread that tied together the entire art project, and everything else was related to that swim. Because I can remember being there and growing up with people like William Wordsworth, and I always thought it's just like wandering along by the shore. But I thought it could be. I wanted to do something that you would have to train, you would have to change yourself physically and mentally in order to be able to complete it. And I had to do that, figure out how to do that, and then like I say, like map that process. And I was interested to just see what would come out. What the paintings looked like. How would the swim like inspire the forms and shapes and colours, and what would be the end result as well.
Interesting. I think a lot you just hear of people doing something and then being inspired and then painting the picture after. So that's an unusual take on it. It's interesting. So that's good. So from the River Eden then, so that was a significant first big challenge. Did you continue to do challenges together, the three of you, or starting doing individual things, or how do things map out from then?
We did, yeah. From after doing the River Eden, we realised how much fun it had been, and how good it was to just take something that we had no idea if we could do it, like a wildly ambitious challenge, and then just I think it definitely sparked something more. And from beyond that, the last day we were all, to be honest, we were all gutted to finish. I think all of us just wanted to wake up again the next day and just carry on swimming, because you really get in this sort of flow state of mind where the swimming itself, because it's over such a long period each day, takes on a very meditative form. And then when you've been in the water and in nature for 9 days in a row, like really, really immersed in it, like seeing the landscape in a new way. And then the next day, you know, Calum is on a train back to London, and I'm back to Berlin, and you know, Jack was back to Newcastle at that time. And it was really odd to come back into society and like an urban realm and everything after doing that. So I think that definitely made us want to plan the next thing as well. And then from there, Calum came up with the ideas to basically swim the 3 biggest maelstroms or whirlpools in the world. So yeah, that was fun when he presented that idea.
Calum, who comes up with the ideas.
Exactly. But it's good. It's nice to like have those different aspects of our personalities as brothers. And then it's good, you know, like to have Calum's craziness, and then just combine that, and you know, with different parts of us as well. But so yeah, the next plan beyond that was we would do the Corryvreckan. The Corryvreckan was, we actually did before that year to prepare for the River Eden. And the Corryvreckan is the 3rd largest whirlpool in the world, and that's in Scotland. That's between the islands of Jura and Scarborough. And Jura was where George Orwell lived when he wrote 1984. And we went, and we prior to the Eden, and then after the Eden, Calum planned to travel to Norway and swim across the Moskstraumen and the Saltstraumen, which are the 1st and 2nd biggest whirlpools in the world. But no one had ever done them before, so we didn't, like, where Calum had the idea and we discussed it, we actually had no idea whether it was possible or not. So we had to get in touch with all the ship's captains there, speak to people who understood the tides and the currents, and basically ask them. And a couple of people told us they thought it couldn't be done, but then the more crackers ones were like, yeah, we reckon it can. Just come and we'll help and we'll try it. And to give a bit of context, the Moskstraumen is normally that's between 5 and 9 degrees, the water temperature. So it's quite chilly. Same with the Saltstraumen, and they're both in the Arctic Circle off the Lofoten Islands in Norway. And the Moskstraumen is, hang on, actually, I've got the exact. It's 8-kilometer point-to-point swim, and then the Saltstraumen is 1/4 of a kilometer, but it's across a very narrow gulf within a river, and there's only the tides change, and you have a really short window where you have to get across. And we had 12 minutes by calculations, and we had to follow an exact route through, which was quite crazy because it's in the Arctic. There's so much oxygen in the water that it's really clear, really beautiful when you look under the water, but you can see the little trails of the whirlpools, and you have to make sure you're sort of avoiding those bits as you try and get through. So we travelled to Norway next to do both of those, and those were the next swims that we did.
Wow. Well, I've been to Corryvreckan on a boat, and having seen that on a boat, and that's the 3rd biggest from what you've said, then so they're all super impressive swims. So you guys were the first to do it then, first document.
As far as we're aware, but we're pretty sure for the Saltstraumen and the Moskstraumen in Norway. But quite a few people swim the Corryvreckan.
Yes.
But with the other ones, as far as we know, then yes. But it was that was quite an amazing experience as well, because I remember the first time when we arrived, we did it with like Teresa and Lars, who run a company called Lofoten, and they take people out on speedboats to go and see the Moskstraumen. And they're like really great couple, just proper like no nonsense Norwegian couple. And we arrived, and as soon as we arrived, Teresa showed us a picture of about 40 orcas in the water, and she was like, "Oh, I just took this yesterday in the Moskstraumen." Oh, lovely. And yeah, and there was she had by her house, she has a huge jawbone from a sperm whale that was washed up out of the Moskstraumen maybe 10 years ago, and there was just the skeleton was there, so she took the jawbone and has it next to her house. So it was quite a surreal but quite intense experience. And then again with those kind of ones where we obviously train like really quite a lot to be able to feel confident enough to try them and to make sure we don't take anything lightly, or as we mentioned at the beginning, like we're really, really respectful of the places and of the knowledge of the people who really understand these places. We listen to what they say. But swimming those was a really amazing connection because it's also it's dangerous too, but it just completely focuses your mind on what you're doing, and making sure that everything goes okay and just concentrating on keeping going, and following each other and then swimming together, making sure we don't get separated. But it's quite unlike anything else, I would say, in terms of feeling that connection with nature, because it's just it's just you in the middle of a 8-kilometer whirlpool, basically, in this freezing water. You got to get to the other side. So pretty special experience, I would say.
One way of describing it, No, it's good. I'm just thinking when you said you showed the picture of all the orcas, I could imagine you turn into Calum. It's like, really? We're still going to do this?
Yeah, it was funny because Jack added it to the book he wrote, and it was before we did it. I was thinking about how to train, and for me also, I enjoy that side of it. I really, really enjoy the swimming, the training, trying to get better at swimming, trying to improve my technique, my breathing. Like I really think that no matter what level you're at, you can always get better. You're like, even Olympians are always trying to make those little changes, get a little bit better. So I always work on that as well. But I wrote a list when we first decided to actually go for it of everything that terrified me about the swim. And I tried to think of a solution to that problem to make sure that when I got in the water, I was prepared and I could handle it physically and psychologically. And for example, the simple things like being able to swim 8 kilometers, you need to train to a certain level where you're your cardio is good enough to do that. You're physically strong enough to do that, and mentally as well. Being okay with the deep water, being acclimatized to the cold. I had 6 months of cold showers to prepare for it as well. So it was nice to have a warm one after. I'll tell you that. But and on the list of fears, the only one I wasn't able to tick off or find some way to solve was being in a wetsuit and looking like a seal. That was and because some of the orcas eat seals and some just eat herring, and I couldn't work out a way to solve not looking like a seal.
Fair enough. Yeah. A fluorescent yellow wetsuit or something like that. But yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just to pick on what you're saying about psychology, it's so important. I mean, for our coaching, it's just funny what can affect people, so particularly in open water. I mean, we've had things like the saltiness of the water, the waves, feeling seasick, the darkness of the water. If you're used to training in clear water to suddenly be in dark water, particularly mentioned Scotland. I mean, Loch Ness is well known for giving people vertigo because of how dark it is. And it's strange. So that's interesting to hear you training and preparing your mindset for all those sorts of things that could come up, as well as I remember organising a swim up in Glencoe in Scotland, and there was an American lady, and she said, it's salty. And I said, well, yeah, it's the sea. I said, yeah, but it's an inland loch, so I didn't think it would be that salty. And so it's still the sea. So it's just funny. Yeah, it is. It's all about your expectations, and you just yeah, sometimes things just surprise you, don't they? So it's
Yeah.
good to prepare physically and mentally from that
Yeah.
point of view. So
No, you're totally right. I think like I did a really interesting interview with a guy who he's a high level CrossFit athlete, but he used to be a Navy SEAL. He's an American guy called Josh Bridges, and he was telling me about one thing he learned in the Navy SEALs and then applied to swimming in other conditions. That he really focuses on the things he can control and the things he can't control, and it gives him the confidence to be able to let go. Because, for example, when you get into cold, deep water, you can't make the water warm and shallow. It is, it is cold, and it is, and those are like factors you can't control. You can't control the weather, how big the waves might be, but you can control how you choose to react to them. So you can choose to like prepare yourself psychologically, or you can train in conditions similar so you get used to it. The more you swim, and the more, if you have more swimming lessons and build your confidence, like those are the things you can control. And that always stuck with me. And I've had a few times like when we've done these swims, there's been moments when things are pretty hairy, and kind of like, even in the Moskstraumen, like I got caught a little bit in a current. Calum and Jack were just out of it, and I got caught and I couldn't move. I was swimming as hard as I could, and I was just going nowhere. And I knew that was towards the end of the swim, so I knew the currents were all picking up again, and I had to get out of it. And it made me think of that. It was like I felt, you know what, I can't control that, but I can control how much I've trained, my power and strength to be able to swim out of this. And then so I changed direction slightly instead of trying to fight the current, and then managed to just get out of it. But I think it quite well for swimming in open water and things.
Yeah, oh no, that's excellent, definitely. And I think, and just to preparing, and the other thing that's coming out of these interviews is not giving up, going again. It might not always work first time. And we were talking to Arafat, who I know who we've got his interview linked up as well. That was everyone should check that out. Such an inspirational story. But he says the first time he got in the sea, he felt like he'd been hit by a brick in the head. He just never experienced cold like it. And he said, but just to save face, he just carried on. He was like, I can't be seen to be feeling the cold, so carried on. And he ended up with hypothermia on his first swim. But you think that could just end it, and you think, right, well, I can't do that then. But no, he did it again 3 weeks later. So if you want to know what happened, you have to listen to the interview. But yeah, like I say, just sometimes you can. I raise that because you can feel like you've been hit by a brick, but so you can, like you say, deal with it, not panic. And so that's good. So are you able to swim at the moment? Are you in lockdown at the moment? Have you still been swimming, or?
So I can now, actually. There's quite a few good lakes, or like on the outskirts of the city, and also Slovakia's actually got really beautiful mountains and lakes, and you can drive to them. And Slovakia was very strict with the lockdown at the beginning, and as a result now things are quite open and there's not really any cases. So I can swim out, and I can drive out and swim in those lakes. So there's some really beautiful ones, like ones they've got like glacial melt, so they're quite cold, but again that makes the water clear. It's just trying to swim as much as I can in those at the moment.
That's good. And have you got any more adventures planned, or did you have any more adventures planned as the threesome that you're working on?
we do. We've got quite a few. I mean, one thing I think a little bit of a lifetime goal for all three of us would be to swim the 7 biggest whirlpools in the world. And there's one in Japan, one in Canada, one in New Zealand, and also it's. We're not really doing it as any kind of, we're not trying to like stick a flag in it and we're the first people to do it. Like, it's not really like that. It's more that it's a respectful thing to do. And also to go as brothers, it's a really fun way to hang out with your family. Some people chill out and watch Netflix. We'll just go and swim in the Arctic across a whirlpool, I guess. You know, but why not? But yeah, we do. So I think as a long-term goal, I would love to do all 7 of those. And much shorter term, I think we're all considering at the moment trying to do an ice mile in Iceland. Just for an ice mile is a very good like physical and mental challenge, I think, for any swimmer, and I would love to try and do that. And that's another thing as well. Like I enjoy it because it just teaches you respect for the water, and it shows you your own limits, but it allows you through training and, you know, proper swimming lessons and proper respect, acclimatization, like that you can do much more than you think you're capable of. So that definitely as well. And one like very personal swim for me is I had planned to do it this year, but I won't be able to now because of the lockdown. But I really want to swim with Calum and Jack, do Windermere. So swim Windermere. I think it's 11 miles, and it's the longest lake in England. But one of my really good friends, Ben Osborne, he died by suicide a few years ago, and I would like to do the swim as in memory of him. And I've already spoken with a lot of people about it and get people who knew him, you know, like our friends all together, and already some other people have said they'd like to kayak it or just be in boats or even walk along the shore like while we're swimming, and do it as something together. And the idea is that it would be a project that would also be open to basically anyone who has any connection or is struggling in any way with mental illness, because I still find it absolutely crazy that, especially in men, like mental or suicide is one of the biggest killers, I think, in men under 45. I think it's the main cause of death, which I find that statistic absolutely insane. But the idea, there would be then invite other people, and it's where you need to come and, you know, stand on a stage and talk about everything, and it's just an opportunity where you come and do something physical, and be with other people who might have some connection with what you're going through. And that kind of came out of another idea, because we swam Loch Broom in memory of our Grandma Wild. So when she passed away, a few years later, she's buried at the head of the loch, up in Scotland on the northwest coast. Her house it was on the side of the mountain there, so we still go there. It's an absolutely beautiful place. But Loch Broom's 8 miles, and that's a sea loch up there. And we decided to swim from Ullapool, which is the town, all the way through the loch up to the head of the loch, and then get out and lay a wreath on my grandma's grave in the graveyard there. So we took the wreath in one of the kayaks. And it was really amazing thing to do, because obviously Calum, Jack and I swam, but other people came and swam with us, and we had really, really amazing swimmers come and join us. But then also people from our family, like our mum is a massive swimmer as well, and she came in, and her and my auntie, they swam a section. And it was really lovely because everyone got to kind of pay their respects to our grandma, who was a very loved woman, really unique, crazy old woman, you know, just out in the pay their respects, but in their own way, and also to honour her memory by doing something that she would enjoy. And that made me think about that, swimming can symbolically be something more than just getting in the water and doing that. You know, it really connects you to a place, to a landscape, and then to people and memories as well. Those would be the ice mile in Iceland, and the 7 whirlpools, and the swim in Windermere for my mate.
Not much then. Not many ideas.
Exactly. Lockdown's given me time to plan these things.
No, I joke, but no, like you say, I mean, and there's no timeline, is there? They can get done, and I think the Windermere one sounds fantastic, like absolutely. I mean, even just the training side of things, and having something to focus on in helping mental health, and Windermere is such a beautiful swim. I actually trained for it and then couldn't do it. It was stormy the weekend we were going to do it, but yeah, swimming from the bottom up towards Ambleside, it's just stunning. And yeah, and like you say, do as much or as little. If somebody gets in and does a mile with you or half a mile, or they might, whatever your personal challenge is, that's yeah, no, I think that's excellent. And it's just been having to be you and just talk and just be with someone else. So
you're totally spot on about that. Like, there's really, I think it's completely relative to yourself. You know, like, it's, for example, you know, you're a really good swimmer. You could swim Windermere, you know, without too much problem. But for someone who's just getting started to do, you know, maybe one length is a really, really big achievement. But the achievement is definitely relative to personal ability, and I think that's really important in swimming, especially. And I think also swimming, it's has like a very close connection with being able to help mental health and improve mental health. Like, it obviously with cold water, there's all the benefits for like the physical side, and even things like being great for your immune system. There's been studies that it can help prevent osteoporosis, like it's the cardiovascular benefits, the confidence building for the mental side. But yeah, that's something that really interests me as well, because I like the way that maybe that a swim could be used, because it's a tool that can help against depression, anxiety, these different mental illnesses. But also it can be a way to, you know, like honour my friend, basically, because of what happened.
Yeah, no, that's special. That's really special, definitely. I'm sure that'll mean a lot to his family and stuff as well. And then, like you say, who knows the repercussions if you can help somebody else by doing that, by sharing your friend's story, then that's something really powerful. It's that's good. I got one question for you. It might sound a bit random, but do you ever just float? Do you ever just lie in the water and float?
I do. No, that is a great question. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's
just I know. Sorry, go on.
No, it's good. Like, especially in a wetsuit as well, because then you're a bit buoyant, so you can just spout, and it's really nice.
Yeah, just it entered my head when you were talking about swimming the whirlpool. So I thought, do they ever just chill out? But then when you were talking about your friend too, again, for me, floating in the water is just so peaceful. Like, it's so good for my mental health. I just love it. Just kind of just floating around. So that's what just made me think, do you take, while you're planning your whirlpool swims, do you take time just to relax in it? Or maybe you find whirlpools relaxing, each to their own.
No, definitely. I mean, I guess we've, in these conversations, and we talked about the bigger things, but it's, like I love just the simple little things as well, you know, just even like a 30-second dip is great. I'm happy just jump in a river or whatever. It still gives me that same kind of rush. And I mean, we also have a funny family tradition that every Christmas Eve we have a big barrel of freezing water at my mum's house, and every Christmas Eve we always go out into the garden and so our mum lives in Scotland, break the ice if there's some ice on it, and then jump in the barrel, mainly because afterwards it's so nice afterwards when you've got a whiskey, you're in front of the fire just chilling out, you know, eating some food, and then it's amazing. 2 seconds before, it feels like the worst idea in the world, but yeah.
Makes sense. You're selling me on the after bit. Emails popping up. I've had to turn those off. Technology's good, isn't it? Yeah. I know that sounds good. I mean, like I say, it's each to their own. It's I mean, I love teaching swimming, and I love teaching children to swim, but I find teaching adults to swim is great. And like I was saying, just that floating, I mean, water's such a unique thing, and it's just so weird. You can, like you say, you can literally stick your hand in it. It seems so soft, but yet it can hold your whole body. And I love explaining to, you know, adults of how, and it's just magical in that respect, just having that trust in it and, you know, what it can do for you. And it's so awesome what it can do for you on so many levels. But like I say, on a basic level, it can hold your whole body weight. And it's just kind of, if you can just just learn to trust it and relax, it's just awesome.
It's been it's like really interesting that, like you say, that side of it, and also like the healing properties of water, because Jack's researched it a lot when he wrote Swim Wild, and it's something also that I find interesting. And I went when I did like my Erasmus exchange in Istanbul, so I lived in Istanbul for a while, and we travelled from there. It was quite a while ago, it's before the civil war, but we travelled into Syria, and in Damascus we went to the earliest recorded mental hospital that they've archaeologically ever found anywhere in the world, and in the way that was designed was that it had a fountain at the middle, and there was a small gulf cut out of stone, and then it went round a courtyard, and all the rooms were around this courtyard, and so it had a stream of running water passing through each cell and each room, and because that time the Arabs believed that running water had the ability to heal any kind of injury or like any kind of mental illness. And I remember seeing that and like finding that really impressive, because it was such a long time ago. I think now it's been destroyed, the actual building, but I always found that quite amazing. And I always think about that, like you say, when you're just in the middle of a lake or river or just floating around. And I think they were right. Actually, I think they were onto something. That kind of feeling definitely does work.
Absolutely. I've said it with other people, but I'll say it again too. So I love it because I think in the modern world, swimming is one of the only places nobody can get you. You haven't got your phone, you haven't got anything. No one can get you. I mean, even now in technology, even in the car, your phone can ring, and it's just kind of swimming. It's totally private. It's
yeah. Yeah. No, you're spot on with that. I agree 100%. Again, I liked like with Waterlog, kind of a great book for anyone who hasn't read it, but for pretty much I think every swimmer probably has that on the shelf.
I've got it on the shelf. It's kind of out of reach, but I've got one right there. I should get it and I'll put it in. I'll put a link. Yeah. And you brought us on nicely. Actually, I was going to ask you about. You mentioned the book, then Wild Swim. So you've done the illustrations for that, have you? And then Jack's wrote it. Is that correct? Or
yeah. So
wrote parts.
So Jack's written. Calum and I contribute all sections, and I drew the illustrations for the book. And so Jack's a writer, and he basically wrote about everything that we did, and he always is there with his notepad writing down things, like recording little snippets of conversation. And Jack's probably the most introverted one of the three of us, but it's really nice to read what he writes, because he has like a really good way of describing things, and it's very like interesting to see his perspective of how he felt swimming through either the Arctic waters, or how he felt when the River Eden and meeting these people along the way, and like kind of saying goodbye to our family house, and then he also includes like some tips and things for swimming, and like ways to get into wild swimming, and as well as loads and loads of other things. And it's more, I know Jack started writing, and then the book kind of evolved into a lot about our family, and like how swimming is something much deeper than just a physical activity, and also like with our family, and like as I say, with our Grandma Wild, and for example doing the swim in Scotland, and so yeah, it's got a lot in it. It was really interesting, to be honest, even for me to read it, because it was Jack's perspective of everything there, and to see it from his perspective. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've got a link to the book, so if anyone's interested, definitely recommend checking it out. So we've got links to the book below this, and we've got links to some films. You mentioned films that you've made, so we'll be showing all those as well, so people can check out your swims that you've talked about. And but that's been brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That's been very inspirational, and we can hope you can get out swimming and start ticking off the bucket list ones.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and it's really great to support what you're doing. It's a really worthwhile project. So no, thanks again for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Brilliant, thank you. All right, best wishes, take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Calum, who's the middle brother of the Wild Swimming Brothers. Welcome, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
That's all right. Where are you at the moment? Where are you?
I am in London, just south of Brixton, currently waiting desperately for Brockwell Lido to reopen. So that's it's been my local Lido for about 7 or 8 years now. So come on, Lidos, get them open.
Missing the swimming then, it's safe to say. Yeah, I think that's been a common thread with everybody we spoke to. They're certainly missing swimming. So we had a chat with Robbie yesterday, and a few of the things that we brought up about you boys seems like you were proper boys when you were little. So we've got things like playing with inflatable crocodiles at the beach, exploring tidal pools, dropping into the water like fallen trees, as you do, leaping and flipping like dolphins, and sprawling out in the current like Baloo from Jungle Book. So I said, it sounds like you had an idyllic childhood growing up. Do you want to tell us about where you grew up?
I think we were very lucky to be very rural. So we were born in Yorkshire. So Jack, Robbie, and I, and I think I was about 6. So Robbie's the oldest. So he was 8. Jack was 4. We moved up to Cumbria. And we lived in a very small rural village called Langwathby, and it had a river, the River Eden, which flowed past the bottom of our garden. So it was a very, very rural. There's very little to do in Cumbria. In fact, I think there's one city, and I think it's the least densely populated county in England. But we were always quite outdoorsy. So for us, we didn't need bars or pubs or clubs. We had a river, we had forests. And that was kind of our playground growing up, which was, I mean, there's downsides to Cumbria. Like, it's a pretty small place. It can be quite small-minded. It's not very diverse. Lots of people, never leave. So there's quite a closed-minded attitude, but you can't beat it for the outdoors, the Lake District. Yeah,
I was say, anyone who's not been, it's a stunning part of the country, definitely, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It does rain for 11 months. That's what they don't tell you. Everyone rocks up for 2 weeks on the summer holiday in August. It's like, wow, Buttermere is just beautiful. And then they leave, and then it rains for 11 months.
Well, so I grew up just outside Manchester, so it's about an hour and a half up to the Lake District. So every half term, every school holidays, we were there. Well, like you say though, it's idyllic. You go for your little 5-day mini break, and then
did it rain?
Did it rain? Oh yeah.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah, but still, it's beautiful, definitely. So, swimming then. So, can you remember when you learnt to swim? Have you got memories of learning to swim?
So I remember learning in a place called Sisset Baths in Yorkshire. So we lived, when we were born, as a tiny little village called Skelmanthorpe. And I remember having swimming lessons there. And then when we moved to Cumbria, we had swimming lessons in a little town called Penrith. And I remember, I think we joined a swim club, and we took lessons through that, but it was all indoor. It was all heated indoor pools. And in terms of outdoor swimming, so that's, we learned technique, stroke. We could swim breaststroke, backstroke, front crawl through swimming lessons, which were through school, but we also were in a club. And then outdoor swimming was never treated the same way as those lessons. So in the lessons, you'd have your goggles on, you'd have your swim cap on. And our first forays into outdoor swimming was always just mucking around, going to the beach, running in, swimming around in the sea, jumping into a river. So for us at that stage, there was a very big difference between pool swimming and swimming lessons and swimming outside.
Yeah. Absolutely. We were the same. And actually, thinking about the Lake District just then, as you were talking, I thought, my first outdoor swimming was on holiday in the Lake District. Same thing, just mucking about, and hot day in Keswick, you go in Derwent water and have a swim. But yeah, it's like a treat holiday thing rather than an everyday thing. So it's So
there's always someone who suggests going for a dip on a hot day, isn't there? You don't need to be a swimmer to want to just dip when it's boiling hot and you're at a beautiful lake in the Lake District. I think there's a natural impulse to get in the water.
So you weren't just chucked in the river then by your mum at the end of the garden. You did have swimming lessons.
I mean, I don't want some kind of like Freudian subconscious memory to emerge now of mum dropping me in the river, but no, not to my memory, no. But she was a quite hands-off mother. She always trusted us to go and find out for ourselves. So I don't have any memories of being pushed into swimming or being kind of, pressurized or living vicariously. My mum wanted us to be a great swimmer or anything like that, which she always just very much left us to go and do what we wanted, which probably had its upsides and its downsides, if she was being honest.
No,
room for mischief.
Yeah. So the first big adventure I got to know about you guys with was, you mentioned the River Eden, was swimming the entire length of it, 90 miles, I believe, over 9 days.
90 miles, yeah, that's the one.
So why? How did that come about? So you straight in for a 90-mile, 9-day swim with your brothers.
It was a weird combination of boredom and so we'd had this really rural upbringing, all gone off to university. We all went to university in the northeast. So I went to Durham, Robbie went to Newcastle, and Jack went to Northumbria. So we're all quite convenient for mum, I think, just one drop off in the car. So we all went to the university there, and then you think you just get swept up in everything. And before you knew it, I'd been in London for 2.5 years, working in a corporate job and spending my evenings in bars, going out. Like, my connection to nature was minimal at best, maybe sitting in a park at lunchtime or something. So we'd gone from being incredibly rural, outside in the natural world all the time, just fast forward 2.5 years in London. And I kind of got into triathlons, and I was doing a few Ironman triathlons and was training for those. And then got a little bit disillusioned with kind of the racing element, and it just got a bit, it all got a bit out of hand. I did a double Ironman, so double the distance of an Ironman, but all in one. So it's like a 4.4 mile swim followed by 230 odd miles bike ride, and then a double marathon. And I think I was just like, why am I doing this? Is this fun? Yeah, I cried. I think it took me 40 hours, 30 minutes, and I cried during it. I hallucinated. I thought the trees were talking to me.
Wow.
And I was like, well, what next? Do I do a triple? There was people doing triples there. And I kind of thought, no, this is maybe not the way to go here. And just was looking for something a little bit different, maybe not a race. And I just kept this a pad that I always doodled in or wrote ideas down, and I was coming up with all these silly ideas like, I'll quit my job and I'll do a marathon in every country in the world, or I'll cycle the world or something. And I thought, I need something a little bit more feasible. And swimming was always the easiest of the three in terms of it's not that explored. You can't. There's so many runs and rides and climbs that have been done, but swimming's relatively untouched. So after a while, I kind of realized how many rivers hadn't been swum and lakes hadn't been swum, and thought that actually there's a huge opportunity in swimming to do something really fun, really different, and get a little fun world first. And then was looking at rivers in the UK and found the River Eden, number 9 on the list. I'd never ever thought that the River Eden was going to be one of the longest or anything. So I just had Googled longest rivers in the UK, and River Eden was number 9, and thought, that's pretty convenient. We could stop off for lunch at the house.
You're like, that's my river.
Oh, that's my river. Oh, I could wave.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, that's nice. That's good. That's interesting, actually. A lot of the people we've been chatting to have been saying that about disillusioned with racing. It's not, they don't want to be not that you don't want to be an athlete, but just in not enjoying being an athlete and racing. It's about swimming and the journey and stuff. And again, people have said they hate doing the actual swim and just like getting to the end. And again, everybody we spoke to said, no, I enjoyed the swim. So it sounds like you were having a similar experience with the Ironman. Of actually, the best part's been the finishing it rather than the actual doing it. So you don't feel the same about swimming. You actually enjoy doing the swimming.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I don't feel the need to beat anyone. And to me, that's such a strange thing to want to do, to beat a stranger.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
I don't know who you are. I don't know who any of these people are, but I really want to beat them. And I've been, shaving my legs and only eating this food that I weigh out. And I don't have a social life, and I can't have a beer on a Friday. Like it's so extreme. And to me, it's only really worth it if you're, an athlete.
Yeah.
But because of the explosion in sport and triathlon and marathons, there's so many amateur sports people who then do the same thing, but it's not really worth it. You haven't found a balance if you're whereas swimming to me always felt a little bit more like you could never tell who was the best swimmer. In fact, usually you'd get egg on your face if you tried to guess. It would always be the most unassuming person who you would never imagine to be a top athlete who was actually the most hardcore swimmer, because a lot of it's psychological. I see kind of like muscle bound gym people, nothing wrong with a gym, brilliant. But if it's all about looks and it's all about what kind of music's playing, and it doesn't appeal to me. No, I'd much rather just your everyday person who you just never assumed, and you find out that they do the, I don't know, massive channel swims or an ice miler or something.
Yeah. That's nice. Swimming just emerged for you then. It wasn't a big lifelong dream goal. It was just, you just had a natural love for it, and you're like, actually, yeah, we'll do the swims. So we got any memorable moments then of the River Eden? So doing it with your two brothers, was that the first swim you'd done together?
We did one before. We did the Corryvreckan maelstrom in Scotland, which I had, because none of us had really done much open water swimming. Like I was doing my triathlons, but there's quite short swims, so we hadn't really swum together at all. So I thought that it would be good to chuck Robbie and Jack in at the deep end and do the Corryvreckan, which is just off the west coast of Scotland, and it's the maelstrom. So it's essentially incredibly turbulent waters between two islands affected by the tide. And sometimes people swim it and it's really not that, not that big a deal. It's, relatively flat or calm, and it's just a beautiful, lovely swim in Scotland between two islands. But we got it on a horrendous day, and the ship captain, a guy called Duncan, he said it was one of the worst days he'd seen in a decade. And he was like, "You guys are really experienced, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yep. Yeah, Duncan, you and me, mate, you and me." And Jack and Robbie, Duncan was like, "You've done lots of sea swims before, haven't you?" And Jack and Robbie were like, "Yep, definitely, we will be fine." So that was a real in at the deep end moment. And Jack and Robbie went off in different directions, and we had to kind of herd each other across. Mum was in the boat, so she was cheering us on from the boat. Yeah, I remember before we went in, she looked at me and she took me by the shoulders. She said, "I've got absolutely no doubt in my mind that you will do this."
Wow.
And jumped in the water. So that was, Mum was there from day one.
Good.
And then after that, we had a few whiskies, and then the Eden seemed doable because we'd done that swim, which was 28 minutes.
It's a big one to pick. So for people, am I correct, it's the third biggest world pool, is it? It's a big one, isn't it? And for your first sea swim, it's a bold one to pick, let's say.
I don't know, because I've been talking to this about with a few friends recently, like why, there's a little bit of self-belief. So you have to think that you can do it in order to go and do it. And that's often what holds a lot of people back from, it's not that they're physically incapable of doing something, it's just that they think they can't do it. And once you remove the physical barriers, i.e. if you know how to swim or you've swam in the sea before, then you can replicate that and increase the distance or do it in tougher conditions. And so much of swimming is not panicking. So if you have some inner confidence or self-belief, then you're calmer during. I think also I just really enjoy it. I love it. I love the best swims I've had have been the most extreme conditions. There's nothing more disappointing than a glass flat sea. I want the waves. I want the elements. I want to. Otherwise, what's the point? I might as well just go in the local chlorinated coffin and do a few lengths.
One word for it, but yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that's what I refer to indoor pools as, chlorinated coffins.
Yeah. It's quite common. Yeah. So Robbie was telling us, so you went on after doing the Corryvreckan and you'd done the River Eden, then you decided to head up to the Arctic Circle, as you do. you go extreme, don't you? Different directions.
I don't know where that. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where the seed of that came from. The Eden was 145 kilometers, 90 miles, 9 days. We were with friends. We had friends as support kayakers. It was tough in terms of the cold, but the actual psychological challenge, there was no dangerous wildlife. There was some rapids and weirs, but it wasn't scary. It was more physically challenging, coping with the cold and getting in day after day after day. So I think that really gave us a sense of, well, why not? We had no prior experience. We planned it, we organized it, and we did it. I think the main thing I would probably, I don't want this to encourage lots of people to go off and do things that they're unprepared for. We heavily relied on expert advice. So for the Eden, we spoke to a lot of different river swimmers. We spoke to people who'd swam rivers from source to sea. We spoke to Borat Strel, Martin Strel's son, who organised all of the river swims. And, bearing in mind, the Eden's 90 miles and this guy organised a 3,000-mile swim down the Amazon. So we over-planned. And for the maelstroms in the Arctic Circle, it was because we did the Corryvreckan, and I just thought it was such an amazing swim. What's a maelstrom? What even is that? And then you go and see it and you're like, wow, these whirlpools exist. They're massive. There's all this literature around them and songs and fables. So I kind of thought, well, if the Corryvreckan's the third, there must be a number 1 and 2. And they just both happened to be in Norway, in the Arctic Circle, in the Lofoten Islands. And I just thought, that's got to be on. Get Robbie and Jack involved. They can't say no. They said yes to the Eden. It'll look like they're chickening out.
That's the way to do. So we've got a film that covers that. Is that correct? We're going to be showing the film with you guys doing that. So there's links to that below. And you guys have got a book as well. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, quite lucky that Jack's a pretty proficient writer. And so that's the other key thing, is there's 3 people, so it's always fun. And during stressful times or in the Arctic Circle of Maelstrom, you only have to look up and see your brother, and it immediately makes it less serious. And Jack had been writing about all of our adventures. He kind of kept a diary for a lot of them. And after doing the Eden, he decided that he wanted to write a book about it. And it got picked up. He got an agent. It got picked up by Hachette, one of the big publishing houses in London, and they were really keen to do a book on outdoor swimming and wild swimming. And so Jack wrote. Me and Robbie were pretty lucky to get our names on the front, to be honest. Jack did 95% of the work, and I did some tips and tricks and advice and a few sections, and Robbie did a lot of the illustrations. So it was really fun working on it together. It's very proud feeling looking at a book on a shelf. And it's a very long process publishing a book, and it was maybe 3 years ago or even longer. And I remember going to Waterstones in London, and there was like 2 books on swimming. Nothing, like they had no concept of where to put a swimming book or what category. And now you go into bookshops and there's so many books on swimming. There's a different type of swimming every week. Like swimming with seals, swimming with eels, swimming outside, swimming wild. There's a whole, which is brilliant, and it's it's only a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Is it, you might not be able to, but can you kind of sum up like what the water does for you, how you feel? Like, are you missing it, for example, with lockdown at the moment? You know, it's if you can't answer, don't worry, but it's just, yeah, it's the water seems to do different things for different people, and it's just, we're just curious to ask.
I'm sure, like you, I really miss it a lot. So when I got back from Singapore, I went up to mum's and stayed there for 2 months, and she has a little dipping pond at the bottom of her garden. It's very small. It's little pool in a small brook, but you could go in and dunk and swim for maybe 3 or 4 strokes, and it just was a real release. And I always feel a sense of freedom whenever I dive into a lake or a river or the sea or the ocean. You just immediately reset and you stop thinking about whatever you were thinking about. It's a very liberating experience. It's also very insular in a way, so you often find an introspective, calm moment, you know, that even in a busy pool, you're not necessarily talking to people, you're in your own head with your own thoughts. It's not really, or maybe that's just when I swim, but it's not really strenuous. You know, I'm never going at 100% when I'm training, really. Well, that's not really training, is it? Maybe I'm doing something wrong there. I don't know. Is it the same feeling for you?
Yeah, and it's funny, that's come up in a few of the interviews. Yeah, it's been said a couple of times. Swimming's one of the few things when nobody can get you. Like, say, it's one of the only things we do in modern life where you don't have your phone with you. You know, it's yeah. So it's definitely very, like you say, it's very freeing in that respect. And so yeah, a lot of people have said the same. It's just similar kind of words that you've used, freeing and just recharge. And yeah, everybody's got a different kind of take to it, but at the same time, I think everybody's realizing just at the moment, because we can't do it, how much it means to them, you know. And yeah, it's interesting from that point of view. One of the things we asked Robbie was, because he was talking about you guys being go, was I asked him, did he ever just stop and float? But from what you've just said, then it sounds like you do. Yeah, you do just take time to relax. He was like, oh yeah, I do, we do. He said, but let's say it's not all just go.
No, and you know, I know this sounds strange, but we're not actually that good swimmers. You know, we just talk about it a lot, and you know, have been lucky enough to have a platform that we worked on, and we've created a lot of content and videos, and we had so much fun doing it that it kind of got picked up a little bit. But you know, we'll do a swim race, and we did one recently. Me and Jack did the Thames Marathon, 14K. And you know, we were near the back, you know, and down at the local Lido, we're by no means the fastest or the strongest, or you know, there's a lot of you know, I'm still kind of trying to get my head around some of the bigger swims and the big ocean swims, and you know, how do you cope with 15 hours swimming when there's a good chance you might see a great white shark?
Yeah,
you know, I think that's the other thing, is the more that I don't know what the name of the theory is, but the more that you learn about something, the more you realize you don't know. And I think swimming has been like that for us, that the more we've gone into the swimming world, you know, you realize that there's all these really, really incredible athletes and swimmers out there. And I tried to do some cold water swimming last year and swim all the way through, before I went to Singapore, all the way through the winter, and loved it, and did an ice kilometre, a kilometre under 5 degrees, which I really enjoyed, and found it a new kind of type of swimming that I'd experienced before. Started researching it and found out that a lady called Lynn Cox did a double ice mile in the Bering Strait. And the ice mile to me had become this, the kilometre was really tough, but how do people do an extra 600 metres on top of that? And then I found out Lynn Cox did I think it was 2.4 miles. So a double ice mile with an extra 400 meters at 3 degrees. Yeah. And I just couldn't even believe it. The more I know it's, so, you know, we have a lot of fun when we do it. We're not necessarily doing any of the really dangerous, swims out there. We'll see. Mum wouldn't let us get away. Maybe if one of us wanted to do it, but I think if you've got 3 of your kids,
yes,
your mum because Mum loves swimming. She absolutely loves it. We've rebranded her as the Wild Swimming Mother, and now she swims probably more than all of us. But I think maybe if I wanted to do something really extreme, she might let one of us do it, but maybe not all three.
And recommend for you and everyone else listening that they have a listen to Jamie Monaghan's interview, because she was the first person to do 7 ice miles, I think, on 7 continents. So and she just talks about it very humbly. You do your first, and you do your next one, you do your next one. But I think maybe that's a individual.
I need some tips on the last 600. It's the cold. It takes on like a different force when it's that level. Like it became this kind of thing in my mind of where like the cold was this thing that I was trying to cope with, and it would work against you. And I had much more respect for ice milers after doing it, because it's in your head. You're like, well, you could probably train for it and it'd be fine, but it's scary because your body starts working against itself, because you start getting early stage hypothermia. So your body starts to, tell you to get out, Calum, you're cold, and you're trying to do all these little tricks and games. Or I had a mantra, which was, my belly is a furnace. And I wouldn't use the word cold. I would use the word hot, the icy water burnt. So when I got in, it wasn't cold, it was burning, which it does burn in a cold way, but then it tricked my mind into thinking I was hot. Anyway, it's all very elaborate when I could have just cracked on.
It makes sense, because we've been talking to people about what you do to set yourself up physically and psychologically. So it's like, it's whatever.
What's Jamie's tips? Do I need to get some tips from her to step up my game a bit? I've been in Singapore for a year, so I got really, really soft. It was about 35 degrees average water temperature there, so I might give it a year and then I'll ask Jamie for some tips.
One of the tips she gives for ultramarathon swimming is just break it into little stages. Just go to the next feed. So maybe that's what you do with your mile. Just do 100 meters, 100
go
meters.
To the next. Did she say, because I've never really done proper open ocean marathon swimming, but I did my first real one in October last year in Malaysia. It was a 16-kilometer island circumnavigation, and I'd never swam in the sea for that length of time. Very hot, and I got salt tongue because I was eating baby food. That was what I was feeding on, and a few prunes and dates, because I always use dates because they're really high energy and they're quite easy to eat. But my tongue was really bad, and afterwards my whole tongue had kind of, the middle part had rotted, and it was really, really painful. And I read afterwards that they use like they'll rinse their mouth out with a mouthwash solution first and then feed. So there's all these like different layers of knowledge required to succeed at the next, because well, great, you've done 16 kilometers, but Jamie's top marathon swim will be like, I don't know. I read that there was a 4-way channel crossing last year. So 4 ways. It's insane. Yeah. Just makes the rest of us look horrendous.
Jamie's longest was 92 kilometers. Twice around Manhattan. Yeah. So it's took 24 hours, she said. So big one. But like I say, you just build it up. She didn't start off doing that, so you build it up, don't you? It's so have you got did you have any adventures planned, or have you had to postpone any adventures with lockdown, or are you waiting to see how things transpire? Have you got anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, we're kind of, I know it seems strange, but the cold swims always quite appeal to us, and we would really like to do an ice mile. So that's the next big challenge really for us. And obviously it depends a little bit on when pools start to reopen. We don't live somewhere where we can just swim in the sea or a river on a daily basis, so we need Lidos to be open to train for it. But that is the next thing that we really want to do, and we also really want to try and explore cold water and the effects of cold water, the mental health benefits, the physiological benefits. And, you know, it was a really interesting insight into the cold water swimming community and people who swim through winter. And I think we really want to dive into that. And there's lots of pockets all over the world. There's an amazing ice swimming community in a northern eastern town in China who've been doing it for like hundreds of years, and all these old swimmers go down and swim in the ice every day. And there's lots of interesting communities all over the world. So I think we want to, I don't know why didn't we just pick, you know, lovely Fiji expedition or you know, pondering around the Bahamas for a week. Yeah.
Well, sorry, I was trying not to giggle then, because I think you all need to talk to each other basically, because you've got different ideas. So.
I think we egg each other on sometimes as well.
You're going to be...
Also that's...
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, one of us could come up with an idea that neither of the other two want to do, but they're like, well, if you want to do it, I want to do it too. Like 2 ice miles, I'll do 3. There's like a natural competition between brothers, which maybe has a negative effect when you're planning expeditions, because it just makes them get out of hand.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's good. You've all got ideas, so yeah, you can fight over which ones you do first, or which ones are possible first. That might be a process of elimination, what you're allowed to do next, rather than what you want to do. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's healthy. So you're not going to stop swimming, that's for sure. You're carrying on swimming together.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing. We'll always have to be brothers, so it's quite. We're forced to do it in a way. And the nice thing is, like, we have created this together and built it together. And there are times when, you know, maybe maintaining social media is maybe not as fun. And you're thinking like, I'm really not doing that much swimming at the moment. It's lockdown, but you're trying to keep our social media channels going because it obviously creates opportunities for things like this, or expeditions, or meeting interesting people, doing talks, doing events. But then you just remind yourself that all we're doing is we're just 3 brothers who go for swims together, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. And if we never left the UK ever again, we could do 100 fun expeditions in the UK. So it's quite, it's a very fun thing to work on together, I think. Well, Jack and Robbie might hate it, and they're just, oh God, not that bloody Calum guy again.
Didn't say that. It just seemed like you're the one with the ideas, but no, they didn't say that.
I think I just want to do fun stuff, and there's that realization when you've actually, the first one you do and you pull it off, you think, oh, that was just an idea in my head that obviously a lot of work has gone into it, but it can become a reality, and you're only holding yourself back, really. There's often barriers in the way that you might self-create, but if I want to go swim a maelstrom that no one's swum, if I really want to do it, then there's no one stopping me. And it's quite a it's scary in a way, because then you realize really you have no one else to blame but yourself. If you haven't done something, or you haven't quite lived as interesting or an exciting life. But actually then it's really liberating to think, well, if I want to do that, I have all the tools and I can. And I think that's where our first expedition came from, was me being a bit bored and miserable in London, thinking, God, is this just it? A corporate job and a laptop and a pint on a Thursday night, and then do it all again on a Monday. And yeah, I think something positive has grown from something quite negative, which is probably something that you can learn for a lot of other things.
Absolutely. And it's, what will you remember doing when you're old and grey, sitting in your rocking chair? What will you remember? Will it be watching Netflix, or will it be swimming the River Eden, or going to the Arctic Circle? Or, so no, absolutely, that's very inspiring. And like you say, it's each to our own. What's our own personal challenge as well? What's the big thing for you? Is it just going for a little dip, swimming outdoors? I mean, actually, some of my favourite swims have been the smallest first ones. Even you can't beat that first moment, that first time. My first mile was in Lake Windermere, and yeah, the feeling it was like, oh, wow. You know, and I'd swum a mile loads of times in the pool. That was, the distance wasn't important, but it was the doing it outside somewhere special. It's so yeah, it's just whatever's your little win at the time. So that's good.
I think that's a really good point, because you're right. Jamie will be watching this back, go, 16 kilometres, rubbish. 190 miles, I'd do that in 9 days. You wild swimming brothers are rubbish, So there's all, to anyone, there's always someone who's done something bigger or better, or So it's definitely an interesting to be. In the last 6 years of swimming, some of the swimming I enjoyed the most out of any of the swims I've done was 2 months I was with Mum, and we just, at the end of each day after working, we'd nick down to a little dipping pond at the bottom of the garden. And I don't know if it was lockdown, but we were noticing things more, and there would be little brown trout were swimming in it, or there was some swifts, so sand martins had nested in one of the banks, and it was just really beautiful and idyllic. And I was swimming for about 5 minutes, just bobbing around in this little pool, but it was beautiful and it was really lovely. It was an amazing thing to do with my mum and reconnect. I didn't think at 30 I'd be living with my mum, dipping in a little pond in the garden, but it was lovely. So I think you can enjoy every swim, and it doesn't always, put down the stopwatch, put down the training sheet. Just enjoy it. It doesn't need to always be a competition.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think that's a lovely note to end on there. Thank you very much for your time. That's been it's been wonderful to chat. And
absolutely.
So we've got links to your films and the books and your website. I can definitely recommend people have a look on the website. They can see more about your story and the artwork and stuff from Robbie and the book and background. So yeah, some lovely pictures on there as well. So definitely recommend people check that one out. And thank you. And
absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.